everyone, I am Bianca Pabotoy and welcome to our Peaceful Classroom.
Welcome to our sacred space,
our peaceful
Classroom. Our Peaceful Classroom is a sacred space where parents, educators, and other professionals come together to talk about ideas on how to promote positivity and peace within ourselves, our families, and our communities. In 2015, the United Nations Security Council adopted Resolution 2250, or the Youth Peace Security Agenda, a first resolution of its kind. The YPS Agenda, Youth Peace Security Agenda, emphasizes the importance of youth as agents of change in the maintenance and promotion of peace and security. In the Philippines, the Youth Peace and Security Agenda is a living document through the Young Women Plus Leaders for Peace program of the Global Network of Women Peacebuilders. Our speaker for today, Lynrose Genon, is a member of the Executive Council of Young Women Plus Leaders for Peace, again, a network of young women and young LGBT leaders from the Philippines who are agents of peace and advocates of human rights, women's rights, gender equality, and peace and security. Lynrose is currently a faculty member at the Department of English of Mindanao State University Iligan Institute of Technology, or MSU IIT, and an assistant to the director of the Department of Extension of the Office of the Vice Chancellor Research and Extension of the same university. She holds a Bachelor of Arts degree in English and a Master of Arts degree in Culture and Arts Studies. She focuses on youth, leadership, education, and peace. So today, we get to talk to a fellow young peace builder who has taken both the Philippines and the world by storm through her speaking opportunities, international engagement, and just her amazing work. Today, we get to learn how Lynrose manages to speak the language of peace in global spaces. Hi, sis.
Hi, sis. Thank you for having me.
So glad for you to be here. And I guess all our viewers are curious, what is a day in the life like for a young person working in peace, both in the setting of the academe through your work in MSU IIT and in the field through YWLP?
Right. So I think, if we talk about the day in life, like it's different all the time. So I think I will be talking about moving from one space to different spaces. Like, for example, in the academe, of course, my life would be classrooms, offices, having meetings, or sometimes, facilitating workshops if there are programs. So that's my life. Like any other maybe people who are working in a state university. But I think it gets more interesting when I go to the community. And sometimes, not just in Young Women Plus Leaders for Peace, as a network that I work with when I go to the community, but also my university work extends towards the community. Because if I'm not sure if you are familiar, but in the Philippines, as a university faculty, you have three mandates. You have instruction, which you get to teach in the classroom. You do research, and you do extension. Extension is your community work, and so research and extension, to some degree, requires you to go and immerse in the community. So when you are in the community, it's usually it looks different as well, depending on your agenda in the community. Sometimes you do facilitation, sometimes you do focus group discussion, research. So I think it's varied, and it depends on really the kind of work that you do in. But what I'm trying to say is that my space in the university actually overlaps with the community. So yun.
That's very interesting because my follow-up question is actually like, is the world of being a professor and a peace builder different? And maybe you can share like what are the commonalities between the two?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question because I am a language major. So, and language plays an integral role in peace building. I mean, both in advocacy and in capacity building. One thing that I feel lucky about is that I get to marry my personal advocacy to my career. So it seems like these spaces are interconnected, very interconnected. And I think nga may mga times na hindi mo maiiwasan na, sometimes you're representing both, like hats in one setting. So I think my professional training in the academia helps me, like in engaging better in the community and co-creating solutions with the community that I get to work with. I also get the network and access to opportunities, resources, and expertise because of my affiliation in the academe. And in the same manner, my engagement in the community informs my teaching. And in the classroom, it keeps me grounded and helps me translate theoretical subjects. Like, for example, I teach language and power, language and post-colonial studies into real world and concrete life examples. And this makes learning more meaningful to my students, I would like to believe. And these are the things that I would never had an opportunity to learn in the limiting walls in the classroom if I didn't have any interaction in the community. So, and also another thing that I could probably point out is that my facility of the language, because I majored in English, and also the medium of instruction in the university, has given me access to spaces where I think, young people need to be present. I think, for example, the UN high-level meetings and consultation, these spaces can be intimidating. And one factor could be language. And to be able to, bring stories from communities to inform Youth, Peace and Security Agenda, maybe UN Secretary General report or Sustaining Peace Agenda of the UN is also another place where I think my advocacy and my profession meets. So, and in language, we were trained and we will learn that the power of discourse in creating stories, in creating realities and in creating truths, and also the power of narratives. And the diversity of narratives is the currency of peace building. If you want to build social cohesion in a deeply hurt and fragile community like where I am from, by heart the value of inclusion and the violence of flattening one's narrative, and also the cost of having one single story or even lack of stories of a culture, of a people. So I mean, for me, it's mutually beneficial, I would say, and mutually reinforcing. It's not totally two different worlds.
Wow. I think that's really great. And I'm very, very happy that you raised how important the narrative is, because I think that really shapes trust between communities also when you have like an acknowledged and a very inclusive narrative which you all contribute to and all agree with, I suppose. You've mentioned interaction a lot in your past answer, and I'm just wondering how this has changed in the past year, with the quarantine and in lockdown. Has it been a challenge? How's the experience so far?
Totally, it is a challenge for someone who has been, in constant interaction, both in the academia, in the community. You can't with COVID-19, you just can't autopilot. It's going back to the drawing board and really, think about how you can do things differently. But the advocacy stays the same, the purpose stays the same, your profession stays the same, and your mandate stays the same. But I think in the absence of, physical interaction, and it is, I think, through language that we maintain our social connectedness. And we can be physically separated, but we cannot afford to be silenced in all aspects, And that's why I think it's very, very important for the academe to still hold classes, to still continue. Because, we need education, we need language, we need these spaces to make sense of what is happening around us, and we need these interaction, this communication. Even if the platform has changed, we need this virtual interaction to keep the connection alive and to also make us feel that we're not alone, and in this very uncertain world that we are put into. And I believe also the value of conversations, and the value of dialogue in times of distress and in times of uncertainty. So I think the platform has changed, yes, and it has added a lot of like vulnerabilities and also a lot of challenges that has not been there before. We realized that before, alam naman natin na talagang poor yung internet, poor yung ICT infrastructure ng Pilipinas. Pero if you are in the university, you can really feel it because you have the facilities and you have the support system. But now, naging ano siya, naging felt siya, at you realize that even mobile signal and internet becomes a basic right, and it has left out a lot of young people, a lot of students, for instance. So yun, as to the changes, it was very dramatic, overwhelming in the beginning, but what I think remains the same and remain even despite the changes is that the advocacy continues. It's just the platform that has been changed, I guess.
Yeah, indeed. Very much a time of reflection, adjustment, and a lot of creativity for everyone. Yeah. So, in conflict analysis, since we are peace builders, we do a lot of like conflict trees. But this time around, I wanted to make a peace tree. And so I'm curious, what are the roots of your engagement with peace? What drew you into this field? And why this field among so many other possibilities out there? And how did you know that this is the field you wanted to build your career on?
I think my answer to that is very, very personal. So I would say that I remember writing a blog about sustainable development goal number 16. And it was like the introductory of my blog that, like SDG 16 is not just a hashtag. It's not just like a very remote goal that we talked about. It's not a UN goal. It's our life, and in connection to that, like what brought me to peace building really at an early age is my personal experience. In 2008, I'm not sure if you've heard this, like I'm from Columbugan, Lanao del Norte, by the way. So our hometown was attacked by the Moro Islamic Liberation Front because of a failure of a peace agreement. This is the MOA at the time. So I was 13 years old. I was in second year high school. And so I experienced like fleeing home in my pajamas, bringing a rice cooker because we need food, because you were caught unprepared in those times. So I experienced being so afraid to go back home. Home was defamiliarized to me in with that experience. A place where I find solace, where my friends are, and I also have friends who had been they were hostage at that time. So it was very difficult experience until now when I get to recall such experience. It was horrible. And at the same time, I also experienced the life of being in an evacuation center. And one of my reflections at that young age really was that I don't want this to happen again. So at the time, because there are a lot of activities happening in the community, so I started. That was my entry point. I started volunteering. I started being part of the organization, and then from that until at this time in my life, I think I was able to sustain it because I find meaning and I find purpose. I think in that experience. So what really brought me was that particular personal experience.
Wow, thanks sis. Thanks Lynn for sharing that. And I think yun talaga namulat. That's when you really opened your eyes
Mm.
to the reality that's happening outside the circles we just live in. Because I think as a young people, we're the center of our world. But then sometimes things happen to us that makes us realize that there's something bigger out there and there's actually something we as young people can do about it. Um, I remember when I was a student in my peace class with Dr. Hasmin Galase, the former executive director of the Center for Peace Education and currently the vice president of Miriam College. Shout out, Dr. J. She actually
I'm a
presented,
fan.
yes, she actually presented the different possibilities one can have, if they pursue a career in peace. And one of which was actually traveling a lot. So very glamorous-ish. And I know
Mm.
you've had your fair share of trips also around the world as a peace builder. So my first question on that is, what was one of the most unforgettable trips you've had, and what work did you do for that trip?
Right, before I answer the
Yes.
question, I think I would like to point out that I didn't really imagine that I can make a career out of peace building, to be honest. So I pursued, teaching, right, as a career.
Not the
But
most
later in
lucrative
part of my
job.
career, yes. So I was able to marry it, and now I'm thinking, really. So it wasn't peace building. I wasn't really thinking of making it as a career, because it's in the Philippines, in the context of the Philippines, right? You work in NGOs. It's not usually stable. It's not you are program based
Yeah.
and funding based and so on and so forth. So yes, I still have I got lucky. I think it's a privilege, like if you are working in this field, to have your fair share of trips in the world as a peace builder. And I think one of the most unforgettable trip that I had was in 2018, New York. It was my first UN experience. I never imagined it in my entire life to be sitting in a panel and with UN officials. So I think it was memorable because it was my first time the UN engagement, because I was since I was 13 years old, I was been engaged with young peace builders. I had fun doing it. I find purpose in doing it. But never did I imagine that these experiences actually matter in a higher platform, in a platform that includes policymakers, and in a platform that I only get to read in reports and only get mentioned in classes. So it was surreal for me in the beginning. It was intimidating. So I think that mixture, and also I feel privileged to be in that space, and I was so happy at the same time to be able to represent a community like Kulambugan. I mean, no, not even if you're in the Philippines, as most of not all Filipinos are aware of where that place is. So I think putting that narrative in the bigger picture, and allowing that narrative to inform policy, I think it's such achievement for me personally. At the same time, with the community that I bring with, I think that mixture of excitement, makes that trip, I think, memorable in that sense.
Right. Yeah, and it's true. I think we have to acknowledge that working in like the development world and getting paid is such a big privilege, because again, this is not the most lucrative of jobs. It's very cutthroat in a way. You have to keep applying and you have to keep looking for a position, otherwise you will get unemployed. So sobrang bonus na lang talaga that these trips are possible, of course, pre-COVID. Again, in this life of a peace builder, it also means it's a life of writing and reading statements to, again, diplomats and other civil society organizations. I'm curious, what was like the most unforgettable statement you've delivered, and why? Yes, Miss Universe. Miss U.
Napaisip tuloy ako. I think similar din nung yung first
Yeah.
2018 experience with, I was invited to the Global Network of Women Peace Builders, and it was the launching, also renaming of young women leaders, and so it was a very beautiful experience. And I think in one of the panel session, I one of my opening statements is that we are a piece of peace, and that we are all interconnected and have a role to play to achieve sustainable peace. I think at the time I was stressing the need for stronger collaboration, and intergenerational dialogue, and partnership with the young ones and the young ones. So yun, I think because you were talking about sustainability of peace movement. And I was appealing at the time for support, for capacity building for young people, and also like mentorship, and meaningful inclusion of young women in peace building and sustaining peace. So that line, I didn't know that there was an independent study at the time, like the missing piece, right? So, and then that one of the panelists actually mentioned to me, because that was my first UN really engagement, and said that your opening statement was really connected, like captures the message of the missing piece. So I think that one of the most memorable, unforgettable statement I think that I have.
Very serendipitous and
So,
obviously aligned.
yeah.
And
Parang kang si
yes,
parang kang si Elsa, tinawag ka ng
falling talaga no.
uh,
And interesting on sustainability, that's exactly because I also got to interview Ana Oposa, who also through
Tita
CCAP.
A.
Yes. So I interviewed her, and she really said like social change, we're in it for the long run. So this isn't like a short kind of thing that you do.
Yeah.
And exactly, you need to engage with those people who've come before you and those who will come after you also. So super agree with sustainability. And I guess from 2018, you've been going back and forth to the UN, and even outside America, you've also gone to a lot of other countries. What have you learned as a young Filipino being in such like global and international spaces?
Your narrative matters. I think that's very, very important. In whatever table that you are in, no matter how intimidating it can be, because there are policymakers, and if you are from the community, sometimes you don't speak the language, sometimes the jargons will eat you up. But one thing that I always remind myself in whatever spaces that I have, and bringing my advocacy with me, is that your narrative matters, your voice matters, and do not ever question your space in that particular event. And I think that has sustained me, and that has given me courage, like to own up my truth, and share your voice, even if sometimes your voice falters, and even if that space seems very, very unfamiliar unfamiliar to you, and in most spaces you can barely see another Filipino or a Filipina in the room. So in times that you feel like you feel alone, and in that, because it's sometimes nga, diba, my experience nga ako na yung Asian in the in the room. So I think one thing that I really learned from those experiences is that your narrative matter, and your voice in that space actually matters, and you have to believe in that. It has to begin, it has to come from you. So yun, I think
that's really beautiful, and it's true, because if you don't share your narrative, then that narrative will never be known to the world. And it's true, like you wouldn't also be invited to a space if you don't belong. So I guess that's a good message to all young people out there, that if there is a space for you and it's offered, then you should really take it, and just learn as you go. Bahala na. Just say you know how to ride the horse, and just learn it on the way. And further on to the learning part of it is, it's powering through challenging moments for sure. I'm wondering, what was a challenging experience, one that maybe, disrupted your inner peace doing, the peace building work? And if you can share it to us.
I think recently, one major experience I would say is the Marawi siege. Really, it did. I was saddened. I can still remember that I was in Iligan at that time. I feel angry. I was kind of in denial, because all along I started working in peace building since I was 13, and Marawi siege. I was already working when Marawi siege happened, so I was in denial because this is happening again. So I was really asking myself that, the question ko then, was it all worth it? Yung mga ginawa namin workshops, yung mga immersion sa community at that time, because I was able to be part of a huge project in 2000, even before Marawi siege. So and it was a 2-year program. So I had a chance to get closer to the community in Lanao del Sur, and in that area. So and napaisip din ako, like as individually, as an part of the MSU system, what did we lack? May hindi ba tayo ginawa? What did we do wrong? So yun yung mga tanong na naisip ko at that time, and it really challenged my advocacy, yung my commitment to peace building. So I think yung ginawa ko doon, I can still remember that I was like browsing through Facebook. I have a lot of friends on Facebook who are affected by that. So I remember scribbling my thoughts down. Itong mga tanong na to, and I think I also, it brought back a lot of horrible experience back in 2000, 8 that I shared with you earlier. And so after that, siguro ginawa ko, I talked to friends and the university and my workmates, and also that was the time that the following day I went to the university and talked to our dean and to our assistant dean, and I said that I want to volunteer whatever our initiative that our university would come up in response to the siege, and that like opened windows to me to be part of the relief operations, to be part of the team who handle who manage the evacuation center for students at that time. At the same time, that was the experience, the difficult experience as well, that made me connect and work with fellow young people to do Project Yakap. I'm not sure if you've heard about that, but yeah, the capacity building program that we crafted in response to the siege. So yun. I think kung may particular experience man akong maisip top of my head, one that's really challenged, like my peace building work is that.
Yeah, so tough. Yeah, I mean, it's very still so fresh, and unfortunately I don't think anything's been really been done to address what happened after the siege. And to think may ano na dun eh, we were so far na in the peace process as well, like the camp signed, and so you wouldn't have expected that already kasi parang could hold on to like an agreement. So yeah, I feel you, and thank you again for sharing that. The peace work isn't as glamorous as it often seems. It's not always state, dinners or wines, receptions. And because this is our peaceful conversation, our listeners could find themselves relating to the whirlwind of like managing work and relationships and, the impending future all at once. So what are some things or activities that you personally do, like regimens, to help you cope and manage difficult emotions and situations?
Yoga. Number one. Yoga. I mean, it helps me recenter actually. And when I lose track on things, and I think that has helped me a lot, survive the pandemic, to mention. And, when you get eaten up by all the horrible news in social media and all the work, because you get to do a lot, you do multitasking at the time. So and breathing really helps in dealing with anxiety as well. So I think that's one. Second is reading. So I read books, I enjoy it. So I yes, I read Pema Chodron, Thich Nhat Hanh. I also read maybe Krista Tippett. I also listen to her podcasts. I read poetry, so I read Mary Oliver's work. So these are some of the works, are authors that keeps me sane, I would say, and also helps me make sense of things. When things becomes confusing, and also it inspires you. It inspires me personally when things are dispiriting. So yun yung that's the second one, and I think the third one is I write things down. So I keep a journal with me, and it keeps me track of my emotions, and it is a way of release as well. So yun. So I think those are the three things that I do to keep my inner peace, and so that I will be more productive in the things that I do.
Yeah.
So,
of course, because you can't give what you don't have. So as a peace builder, I think it's very important that we foster the peace within ourselves. Otherwise, you're just spreading yourself out so thin and mababurn out ka lang eventually.
True.
And I think we're approaching the end of this conversation. And so, of course, in any meeting, the end would always be moving forward action point. So now I wanted to ask, how do you see young people's participation? Because you're at the heart of it. And as what I've mentioned in the intro, Young Women Plus Leaders for Peace in the Philippines, keeps the Youth Peace Security Agenda a living document. So how do you see young people's participation in peace and, in greater society move forward in this new abnormal?
Actually, I'm hopeful, but I would say that it is a guarded optimism. I would say that I think that we can do something and that we can reimagine our world anew. This is an opportunity. This is a teachable moment for everyone. So I think one thing siguro na ipo-point out ko is that there's an opportunity to build solidarity. But I think with the online platforms that we have, and I guess we need to maximize that. So hindi naman all bad yung social media and the online platforms that we have, and to keep the advocacy going. And I also hope that like through these platforms we can get to build bigger communities of young peace builders in the country. And we've tried that with Young Women Plus Leaders, and it the cost of it is lesser than really creating. There's still value in doing community peace building dialogues, but with these platforms, it's lesser yung cost. And I think in the Philippines, we are in the process of crafting the National Action Plan on Youth Peace and Security. So I think I find hope in that. So and there are a lot of entry points that we can sustain the work that we do and encourage and capacitate more young people to get on board and join us. And also, the pandemic has shown us the crucial role of leadership in time of crisis, not just in a national level, but also in the local level. And we have seen young people at the front lines, responding to the pandemic with or without support by the government. So I think may this be a teachable moment, like what I said, for everyone about the importance of meaningful inclusion of young people in peace building, and also very important din yung gender sensitive and human rights and family centered crisis response. Because if we don't do that, we know that it is very harmful to the community. So yun, I'm hopeful actually, but like what I said, it's a guarded optimism. It cannot be done overnight, but there are a lot of entry points that we can start from.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And yeah, I think it's really important what you said on being gender sensitive, mindful of human rights and family centered, because this will build on a cycle of violence if we don't manage it properly right now. So for someone who wants to engage but doesn't know where to start, where do they start?
Start with your circles, friends. Could be school, could be community. It doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be huge. It doesn't have to be a national network, right? Then, because I started with my peers, to be honest. I started with my neighbors and with my classmates when I was younger, and engage in activities, I would say, and organize. If you have a couple of friends, organize yourself, and I think it's a good start. I do believe that there's no such thing as a big or small contribution, just contribution. So long as you're doing something for the betterment of the community, then I think that's really a good start. So
Perfect. And for our last question, for those who may have been losing hope, again, you said yours is a very guarded optimism, guarded hope. What is a lesson or realization you can share as someone who's met not just Filipino peace builders, but other young and amazing people who are fighting the good fight of peace in other parts of the world that are also just as challenging as, what we face here at home?
I think it's easy to lose hope if you feel alone. So, but I think what I want to remind, people are listening to us, that you're not alone, even if at times it feels like you are. So, and I think we cannot afford to lose hope. It is tempting at times. It can be a privilege at times that everyone can afford to lose hope. And I think it is immoral if you have the capacity, if you have the platform, it's immoral to lose hope during these difficult times. So please don't. And I think through connecting and engaging and pressing on, I think you will regain that passion that really pushed you to start doing your advocacy to begin with. So I think what I want to really emphasize when we talk about hope, because I think it's the currency of development work, right? We just cannot, individually and collectively, we just cannot afford to lose hope. especially during these times. So,
Thank you so much, Lynrose. I think
thank you.
that's like a hug to me personally. And yes, this work is not it doesn't happen overnight. Again, perfect, because yesterday Anna and I were talking about it. Development work, what we're doing, peace building, is planting seeds to a garden we'll never see in our lifetime. But we hope that um, this blooms into something useful for I don't know, the generations to come. So thank you.
Yeah.
My
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for the time, and off you go. I will set you free so you can do yoga now. Thank you so much.
Daghang salamat. I really enjoyed it and looking forward to it. Let me know lang if you need anything
Sure.
in relation to this. Salamat kaayo, sis.
So, sis, take care. Camping pod.
Bye-bye.
See you. Bye-bye. Thank you so much again to Lynrose for sharing this space with us today. I think this is a renewed reminder for our viewers, may they be parents or young people, that there really are spaces both in the global and local arena for young people to meaningfully contribute in issues that may have always seen as something just for the grown-ups. I think now more than ever, we need to seriously think about how we use our talents, time, and resources like the internet to promote critical thinking amongst our peers, both online and offline, how we can be more proactive rather than reactive, and dedicating for the common good these individual spaces we take up that actually adds up to becoming a community, a society, a nation, and a world. So that's it for today. This has been your friend, Bianca Papotoy, and we hope to see you next time only here in our sacred space, our peaceful classroom.
From Merinol to Miriam, our history is a tapestry of love, hope, peace, and service. From our humble beginnings to where we are now, our mission continues to grow. After establishing our roots in Quezon City and breaking new ground in Nuvali, we continue to expand our reach as we open 2 new campuses by 2023. MC Alviera in Porac, Pampanga will be the home of the creative class and the knowledge gateway to the world. We are also bringing MC to the world as we offer borderless quality education through an online campus. As our world shifted in 2020, faced with what might be the biggest global health challenge of our time, MC's educational management response focused on continuous learning while protecting the health and well-being of students and employees. The Knoller Learning Portal allowed students to continue their education and access other school services through a virtual platform. Vibrant, dynamic, responsive. A meaningful education for a life of creativity, complexity, and change. MC offers a seamless student formation journey that allows students to grow from strength to strength. Starting with confidence building in the grade school, our students learn to be curious, creative, and free to be themselves through progressive learning. They become multi-dimensional children who dare to create and innovate. In the high school, the journey emphasizes conscience formation. Students think critically about pressing issues around them and put forward solutions drawn from various disciplines. They learn to discern right from wrong and form a solid conscience and a moral compass. They establish a connection with the larger community, and they understand what it means to be part of a complex world. In the higher education level, the journey focuses on building and applying competencies. Students strengthen their 21st century skills in their field of choice, and they become valued industry players as they immerse themselves in real-world learning experiences. They become mindful catalysts for change towards the greater good. Confidence, conscience, competence. These are the trademarks of our graduates. Today, we give our graduates an opportunity to make further contributions to the Maryknoll and Miriam legacy. In 2026, we will commemorate the 100th year of the founding of Maryknoll College. Built on what the pioneering Maryknoll sisters started in 1926, MC is now a progressive, contemporary institution led since 1976 by a lay community rooted in the values of service and excellence. As reflected in our new logo, we likewise revisit an important Maryknoll value taught by the founders, Veritas. We come in full circle as we search for truth and live our truth, always guided by Christ. As we celebrate our centenary in 2026, we look forward to working with you, our alumni, in sustaining and strengthening our institution. Be a part of this moment in our history as we begin a new century of education, service, and empowerment. We are Miriam College, and we are together in this journey.